regrettably, we've had a number of very high-profile experimental drug program failures in Alzheimer's disease in the last year. Along with that, we've learned a fair bit. So one of the things we've learned over the last several years is that it's very, very important, if we are going to have an experimental drug that's targeting, let's say, amyloid or tau, that we should make sure that the individual, even though they may have a clinical syndrome, let's say it's cognitive impairment or dementia, that is clinically thought to be due to Alzheimer's disease, it's actually proven to be, in some ways, by biomarkers, to be due to Alzheimer's disease. So now we have ways of either through spinal fluid, looking at amyloid and tau profiles, or from PET scans to make sure that individuals have actually amyloid in their brain, sufficient amount of amyloid in their brain. And now even experimentally, tau can be seen on PET scans. Again, that's available experimentally. So that's on the diagnostic side, that's very, very important, because you want to give a treatment that is working on a certain protein for the individual who actually has an abnormal amount of that. So that's one lesson that's been learned. The other lesson is very important, is that, and not all the data is out on that, is there have been tremendous failures, unfortunately, of amyloid antibodies and even BACE inhibitors in sort of mild to moderate stages of Alzheimer's disease dementia, and even reaching down to the MCI stages of Alzheimer's disease. And not all the programs have failed. There are at least 2 drugs in phase 3 right now that are antibodies that are still being tested. And for BACE inhibitors, I think 5 out of 7 programs have either been halted because of lack of efficacy, or because they're actually, in some cases, there were some detrimental signals on cognition that were mild, but very reproducible. And there's 2 drugs that are BACE inhibitors that may have a different profile. They may not have the same off-target effects. They may be affecting BACE2 instead of BACE1, and they may be modulating the production of amyloid in a certain way that it's not too much. So some of the BACE inhibitors were inhibiting production in lowering amounts by about 80% or 90%. Well, is that too much? Is there a sweet spot? Should it be 20%, for example? So those answers are still out. So I think while there's less enthusiasm for amyloid approaches in the dementia stages of Alzheimer's disease, even though there are a few drugs that are still out there being tested, the understanding that if you intervene earlier in the amyloid pathway, that's still something that has to be investigated. And particularly, for example, in very early onset or familial patterns where individuals have symptoms, let's say, in their 30s and 40s. That's a very different disease. And potentially by kind of turning off the spigot of amyloid production or taking away plaques for people who've developed them, that may still potentially put them on a pathway of less neurodegeneration and tau formation. So that's still there. I think there's a lot of promise in tau, but these are still relatively early days. We don't know which epitopes of tau to target, how much target engagement, should it be intercellular, should it be extracellular, and there are a number of programs that are investigating that, but I think that's a very, very promising approach. There are also approaches for mitochondrial function, for neuroprotection, for modulating inflammation, which is again like a fire in the brain, and also the components of vascular brain injury, and also pathogens that if one has amyloid, for example, certain pathogens that we're all exposed to may actually make the effects of amyloid more toxic, or the effects of ApoE4, which is a risk factor that we have to induce tau damage much more. So where this is going, I think in 10 or 15 years' time, is that we'll be able to say, not everybody has the same flavor of Alzheimer's disease or dementia. And we should be able to get a particular profile with individuals' amounts of amyloid and tau and neurodegeneration and inflammation, and be able to both diagnose that in a personal way, but also hopefully have more targeted treatments. And I think we'll get there, but I don't think there's going to be a magic bullet, because it's really a complex system. And we require to have studies that go on for many, many years.